And welcome everybody on YouTube for Off the Hook Overtime. Emmanuel is here. Kyle, I think you made it as well.
Yes, I'm here.
Sounds like our friends in Skype land, Rob, Gila,
Good evening.
Hey.
Hello. Yes.
and Space Rogue here with us as well.
I'm still here.
I was okay. I keep calling you Space Rogue and not Chris.
That's absolutely fine.
because that's how I know you, and that's
That's who I am.
yeah, that's exactly who you are. That handle you picked in a few minutes that's stuck with you. There's no getting rid of it. Now during the break, Kyle was telling me some history of his own. You want to share this
Well,
about the loft?
I happened upon the Loft's website when I was very young in middle school, just out of curiosity and some of the news stories I no doubt from perhaps listening to the radio or osmosis, who knows how, but happened upon the Loft's website. And one thing I remember from it, I don't know if this is actually something that existed there or if I just imagined it, but the Loft Eye. That was I don't think it was video, but it was pre-streaming, and it was some kind of image every couple of minutes or something. And I remember that was really magical because there was no such thing as that. I was fascinated with online like radio, real audio. Of course, the radio shows that again, 2600 was pretty ahead of their time, but how ahead of the time was Loft by just doing that? Can you describe it a little bit? Because we had a pre-stream at Hope 2020, and it was sort of inspired by that. Like we did a little bit of a video feed before the event in anticipation, and it was very much from seeing that in my early days.
So that's how Loft changed the world, right there.
For
yeah,
me,
so
certainly.
Loft Eye was an interesting thing. We had a video capture card. I think it was in like a Mac 2 or something, like one of those
Wow.
big, huge old Macs on a new bus card.
Awesome.
And we had a video camera from the flea market in Boston. We have the MIT Ham Radio Flea Market. We find all kinds of junk there. So we had an old video camera, and we had this video capture card. And the software we had would grab a capture off the video like every 3 seconds or something, every 2 seconds. So it wasn't actually streaming, but it would update the picture every now and then,
Yeah,
or
really.
constantly. And if you were lucky, you would see one of us walking in front of the camera, like it wasn't actually pointed at anybody's desks
No.
or anything. But we'd look at the web traffic and the traffic that was coming into our network and be like, that's a pretty popular thing. This Loft Eye that has a static image on it, basically, right? It's just updating every second of the same area in the loft. But a lot of people visited the Loft Eye, I guess, trying to hopefully catch a glimpse of us walking by or something. I don't know if anybody ever did, but it was there, and that's what it was.
Kyle, how does a kid in middle school find out about the Loft Eye?
I don't know. That's what happens. You start reading about these things. You hear about groups. I don't know, search engines. I don't honestly remember how, but I was on that site, and very much. I think the mystery, it just captivated me, and just was inspiring that people were out there, and it was kind of like something that's popular now, I guess, Be Real or whatever, like seeing a clip of something, or like the very streaming site we're on now with YouTube. But it was so early on, and digital photos were just emerging. So having this sense that something through the internet was going on live, like it was so new, and it felt like just another one of the things you did getting online to realize this information age that was out there. And
It's the magic of technology, new technology. We see that today with ChatGPT. All kinds of fun toys to play with and abuse in one way or another. But that's one I had forgotten about.
thanks for sharing. I never got to know more about it, but I didn't know, and I'm thrilled to hear that it was popular.
Yeah, I remember this too. And this was an era like that very early era of online webcams where I remember there was one famous one that was just like the coffee machine in I think MIT somewhere, and there was another one. There were ones pointed at aquariums, and somebody pointed one at like some rotting meat, and it was just like just meat rot. And the Loft Eye was another one. And if you were part of hacker culture back then and you knew who the Loft were, you're like, I want to see what's going on their webcam.
Didn't they just have a
So-
rotting meat cam in the UK where one of the prime ministers was going to resign?
It was cabbage.
Yeah,
It was
yeah, it was
cabbage.
cabbage. Oh, totally different. All right.
But a little bit of trivia for you for Loft Eye. The video card that we used in that Mac 2 was actually the same video card that was used to process the video or the pictures for people that went to the first Hope conference.
That's right. Yeah, I remember that. 1994.
Yep.
You guys came down and you were running the ID system that we were going to use until we realized that each ID took what, about 3 minutes to print.
Took forever.
And we had
Yeah.
1,000 people waiting for IDs. They were so patient. They really were patient. But it turned into us basically having to take cash from people. I think it was Rob from Amsterdam was walking around with a big bag of cash, and we were just taking people at their word that they paid, and then we just gave them some piece of paper that said, "Yeah, this is the ticket."
Or like I think it was a string or something.
It was amazing. By the way,
It was the same video card.
Awesome.
that video card is I hope it's enshrined somewhere. But in 1997 at Beyond Hope, the second conference, you guys had a panel. It was you, it was Mudge, Brian Livian, Kingpin, Stefan Weld Pond, and John Tan, I believe, according to this summary here. And for about an hour, you just talked about all kinds of projects, accomplishments, and it was just, you saw how much fun it was. You saw how much fun you guys were having. This was 1 year before the congressional testimony, and it was contagious, your enthusiasm.
Well, thanks. That was kind of a big moment for me. It was really the first time I had been out in public as Loft, around people that knew kind of what Loft was. And people were coming up to me and it's like, "Oh, you're Loft. Oh, you're Space Rogue." And I'm like, and something clicked, like, okay, Loft is kind of just more than just some random website where we're kind of messing around. And it just sort of, and the fact, if you remember, we had a live video feed from that Hope conference in New York to Chaos in Germany.
Actually, it was to what was it called? HIP, Hacking in Progress in the Netherlands.
Netherlands.
And
it was overseas and it was in Europe. That's all I remember.
Yeah,
I was just like blown away that this was,
to save our lives. We couldn't establish a connection with them. It was kind of similar to our most recent conference where we tried the same thing with another conference in the Netherlands, and we couldn't connect with them either for some reason.
But it was just the fact that it was up for a little bit, like for a few minutes, and it was just that was kind of an eye-opening moment for me about just everything in general. And that conference was really is cemented in my memory. I write about it in the book a little bit. And we have all of us on the stage and we're kind of all talking. And I'm like, all these people are sitting here listening to us talk about nonsense, with what it felt like to me. So it was just really a big, important event in my life.
As it was for all of us in attendance. And you can see that, in fact, on the very channel that people are on right now, channel 2600, there's another section where there's early Hope conferences. Just go to Beyond Hope, look for the Loft talk, and you can see the whole thing. It's really fascinating to watch. I was looking at it a little bit earlier. Now, the Space Rogue, tell us something about the Whacked Mac archives. What's that all about?
Whacked Mac archive. So yeah, that was another one of my little projects that I put together. So before the internet, I wowould dial around to various bulletin board systems, and I was a Mac user, and I would basically download hacking utilities, things like, I don't know, war dialers and credit card number checkers and, whatever doodads that you really couldn't find in most shareware sites. And I had a pretty decent collection of various hacking utilities, little small Mac programs. And so when the Loft had this permanent internet access, it was dial-up still. It was 57.6K dial-up. It wasn't super fast or anything at the start, but I was like, I'm going to share all this with everybody else. And so I started a little FTP site called the Whacked Mac Archives. And I built a little website to go with it that cataloged all the different files that we had. And it was very popular. So much so that it would saturate our little dial-up line with people trying to get the files and download them all. And so unbeknownst to me, Weld and the other folks in the Loft created a script that they would run on the main Loft box, upwhacked, downwhacked. So when they would come in to use the internet and it was saturated with people downloading Whacked Mac archives, they'd be like, downwhacked. Then they'd do their work and whatever. And when they'd leave, they'd type upwhacked and it would come back online. Well, a lot of times they would forget to type upwhacked. And so sometimes it would be down for days. And I had no idea what was going on. And I would come into the Loft and I'd check the site and I'm like, oh yeah, everything's still working, but there's nobody on. Oh, I wonder why nobody's on. I guess it's not that popular. And it was like months would go by before I realized what was going on with this upwhack, downwhack thing. And we all got a good laugh out of this.
Wow. That's really awesome. You've also been involved in speaking out about voting machines, security, and that kind of thing. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so back before it got to be a super political issue, I did a little bit of research and speaking and press releases stuff about voting machines and the insecurity of electronic voting and the risks and hazards to our democracy that take place by having a lot of those machines. For me, though, I think that the rhetoric got to be extremely strong, and so I kind of stepped back from being a public figure in that area because it was just became too much of a charged atmosphere, and the rhetoric on both sides became very, very thick, if you will. But yeah, it's still a problem. It's still an issue. It's not a solved problem by any means, and it's still something we need to watch out for.
Interesting. I'm just going through the list of various things that either you or Loft have been involved in. And one thing that got my attention was a POGSAC decoder.
Oh yeah.
So that's for those who don't know, that's a paging software. So you guys were able to decode a pager traffic?
Yeah. So POCSAG I forget what it stands for. POCSAG, POCSAG. Anyway, it's as you said, it's pager traffic. For those of you who remember that beepers that would you'd beep, and the really high end beepers would have a small little digital display that you could put a message into, and that gets sent over the air, over the radio waves in the clear. And so the protocol is very well known. It's easily captured over the air, and it's easily transcribed back into regular text. And so Kingpin actually designed a small little circuit that would do this. And we put the circuit, we got some circuit boards made. We built the circuits, soldered them together, and put them inside of a DB25 connector, which is, for those of you unfamiliar, it's basically a big wide printer cable that has the end of it. And so you could then plug that into the back of your PC, run a piece of software, and capture all this pager traffic and just read all the pages that everybody's sending back and forth to each other. I mean, you really don't have any idea of who's sending what to who, but it was kind of interesting to see anyway, and all kinds of weird stuff that you would get over the airs, over the radio waves via pagers.
Wow. Anything you remember?
Not specifically. A lot of, I love yous, or, I'm coming home on the way, and a lot of 911, people dialing 911 and the number, meaning, oh, it's an emergency, call home right away, that sort of thing. But it's interesting to look at for a little while. It kind of, for me, it lost its interest pretty quickly.
Well, it's funny. I just remember having a pager, and of course, back then I was pre-cell phone.
Right.
And if you wanted to call somebody, say you were driving, you'd have to pull over to the side of the road and find a payphone and call them that way. And I remember I was communicating with a friend of mine. I did this with several people, actually. And it was one way, obviously. But, I didn't have a text pager. I had just a numeric pager. But we would send text messages by sending the equivalent numerical touch tone key. So if I wanted to, say hello, I would type 43... was it 556 would spell out hello on a touch-tone phone, but I'd have to figure it out. There's no way to figure it out. So I'd be driving in my car in my head, looking at the touch-tone pad saying, what could this person have meant? And then figuring it out. And it made the time go by, but it was those initial steps into that little bit of technology. And it was a bit of fun.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, sometimes people or even businesses would have codes, okay, 537 means this or whatever.
Right.
And then they would be able to just text those numbers back and forth and be able to communicate that way through a certain series of numbers.
Wow, that was amazing. Reminds me also, we had Mudge on the show once back I think in the 90s. In fact, I think it was 1998. And somehow our connection got lost, or the voice part got lost, and we actually started communicating by, I think, pressing keys. And we both realized that we could still hear each other. We just couldn't hear our voices, and we were starting to communicate that way. So it's just these great hacker adventures that we somehow always get thrust into, and that's the magic that exists to this day. And on that subject, what do you have to say to people of today? Maybe people who are just starting out in the hacker world, who don't have the same things that we had back in the 90s. They have far more sophisticated tools now. A lot of people say, oh, hacking's just not the same. The spirit's not the same. What do you think about that?
I mean, the spirit's there. The hacking is still there. It's different, right? It's not the same tech. I'd actually say it's easier. I mean, you got Google. You got all the answers right there in front of you.
Uh-huh.
Just type them, enter your query. You got Chat GPT to find stuff for you. You have much more sophisticated technology, Raspberry Pis, Raspberry Pi Ws. Well, when you can get them, right? There's just kind of a shortage right now, but there's still dumpsters. Dumpsters are still out there.
Right.
There's flea markets.
I remember going trashing with you guys in Boston. It was so much fun, just finding all kinds of things, and then the fleas afterwards, the flea markets, the MIT. Do they still go on?
Yeah, the flea market's the third Sunday of every month at the MIT on Vassar Street. You just in the summer, people show up and sell whatever junk they have, or you go and buy more junk.
We went there with the 2600 van once, and it was a lot of fun. And I don't know why we didn't do that again. Well,
they're still there. They're waiting for you.
And we still have the van, so maybe this year.
I think a trip is due.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have some junk actually we could bring.
Have you ever played with a Flipper Zero?
I have not. I've read a lot about it so far, but that's speaking of technology and hacking, it's a pretty amazing piece of kit that you can get for inexpensive money and do some really, really neat tricks with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
a lot of exploring to do there.
We're hoping to do that. The first hack is getting one. They're very hard to get your hands on, but they are. In fact, I think Brazil just outlawed them because they're afraid of what they can do. For those who don't know, they're Kyle, how would you describe them?
It is like a electronic multi-tool, and it is designed to test and to log and do a myriad of different things for very specific protocols, typically things used for like access control, but it also goes into different radio frequency bands like near field communication, NFC, as people might understand it. And then that kind of goes into things, if you imagine like contactless payment. And of course, it has GPIO.
Someone told me they could steal my car with one. Is that true?
I'm not gonna say that it's for that, but it could definitely tell you a lot about how your car works. I think.
Wow. And someone else said you could just wave it over your credit card and it'll capture that somehow.
I think it can see credit cards. Yeah.
Of course, I could just take a picture of the credit card too and get the same information. Whatever.
But there's a lot of these types of tools, much like Space Hero was talking about, like Raspberry Pi, the microcontrollers, the kits and breakout and tools that you can assemble. They're great, fun little exercises, building little computers or building onto these kinds of multi-tools. And so we're really excited about what people get into and other stuff like this.
Space Rogue, did you ever make it to a maker fair before they stopped having them?
No, I probably have the makings of a maker fair here in my office, but I never actually made it to an actual maker fair. I mean, I've got the 3D printer and the soldering iron, not much more you need, I guess. I do make a lot of stuff that never ever sees the light of day, but I mean, there are opportunities abound for anyone who wants to sort of, get into it, and to think that the golden age of hacking is over is a lot of poppycock. Really.
Yeah, I agree with that. But the thing is, the maker fairs, the ones that I saw in Queens and New York City, they basically illustrated that really well, because you just had thousands of people, tens of thousands of people showing up, all interested in technology and all willing to learn. Not filled with preconceived notions as to what hacking was about. The people who ran the maker fairs certainly got it. And it was incredible to see an endless number of kids just being enthusiastic about learning technology. And it was a real shame when they stopped having those. And I hope they come back someday, because that really is the spirit. The hacker spirit was right there in those maker fairs.
Yeah, they didn't use the evil hacker word. And so people weren't scared away from it.
Well, they when we were there, they used it for us. They said, these are hackers, good. And it was used in the right way. But I mean, as far as calling themselves makers, that's perfectly fine. There's different ways of describing the enthusiasm that people have, and there was a lot of crossover. They were learning to solder tents, where people would spend hours learning how to solder. And just cracking security and things like that. Lock picking was a big deal there. So I hope it returns someday. I really do. And I hope we see more hacker events. Have you continued going to hacker conferences?
Yeah, I still go to as many conferences as I can. Last couple of years have been difficult,
Absolutely.
but I have been able to still participate in ShmooCon, which is fairly nearby for me in DC. B-sides Philly, I'm now in Philadelphia. I've moved out of Boston, so I'm down in Philadelphia now. So I try to do B-sides Philly when I can. B-sides Delaware. I haven't made it up to New York as much as I would like, but I know New York has a couple of good conferences as well.
Yes, we've heard of one called Hope, and
Oh yes, there's hope. Yes.
we're at St. John's University now, so that's completely different.
Yeah, I heard they tore down the old venue. Which is
Yeah, that was the only way they can get us out of there, and but now we're in a university setting instead of a hotel setting, and it's completely different. It's basically they're a lot more open to what hackers are all about, and things work too. Imagine
that's
that.
always good.
Technology that works. Wow. Getting back to Congress, 20 years afterwards, you guys reassembled. You tell us something about that.
So yeah, the 20th anniversary, which was 5 years ago, we had ended up doing 2 events. One, we had a panel at DEF CON that year where we got, I think, 5 of us on stage of 7, which is pretty good. And we had a great moderator, and it was very well attended, and a lot of people asked some great questions. And I think it was a great thing to get us sort of all together again, which hadn't really happened. The other event that we did, we actually went back to Washington, D.C. It wasn't Congress, but it was in the Capitol building, in one of the Senate office buildings. And we did a Q&A and talked about the history and where we are today versus where we were then. And we had myself, Mudge Weld, and Kingpin with Katie Masouras moderating. And so that went very well as well. I think there's video of that online somewhere, as well as the DEF CON talk as well, which is probably on somebody's YouTube channel someplace.
And of course, your original testimony in 1998. I saw that on Kingpin's YouTube page.
Yes.
So, that's
I believe he has it
well.
hosted.
Hey, we're going to open up phone lines if people want to call in. 802-321-4225. Ask a couple of questions of Space Rogue. Please, let's try to keep it on topic. And go ahead, Gila.
I do have a question before our inevitable first caller calls about the Senate hearing, because Rob did find that picture of you guys all at the table, which is fantastic. And my question is, did you get to keep the nameplates?
Oh.
I don't think so. Yeah, because they are actually engraved nameplates, plastic nameplates that somebody somewhere in the Capitol building was tasked to make and actually engrave them. But I don't have mine. I don't know if anybody else has theirs. But it's interesting that you bring up the picture. There's a little bit of a story about that. For those that don't know, there's a famous picture of us all sitting at the table. There's 7 of us there, and we refer to it as the Loft Supper photo because Mudge is in the middle with the long hair.
Wow.
And we're all kind of flanking him on the sides. And I wanted to use that photo on the cover of the book. But it's a copyrighted photo, of course. I didn't take the photo, and I go to the stock photo place and I look up the price for using on a cover, and it's like $1,500. I'm like, I'm not spending that kind of money. But I tell my book designer, I'm like, look, this is my idea for the cover, but I can't use this photo. I don't know if you have any other ideas. And she's like, I can just make a line art drawing of the photo, and then you're fine. It's an original work. I'm like, really? Yeah, go ahead. So that's why there's a line art drawing of the photo on the cover instead of the actual photo.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. Space Rogue, you mentioned the testimony that I had, whatever year that was, that there was video. I've never even known that there was video of that. So if it really exists, please let me know. And if you can find
I will look for it again. I swear I saw it because you were wearing a American flag bandana.
I was?
Yes.
Does that sound like me? Wow. Okay. To Congress I did that? Wow.
Yes.
I had guts.
It's a t-shirt, a bandana.
Okay.
It wasn't a suit. I know that.
Oh, okay. That's true.
I'll look for the video again. I'm sure. I know I've seen it. I just don't know where it is.
Because there's this thing called the Mandela effect, where people swear they were somewhere. That people think Mandela died like in the 90s when actually he died recently. But a lot of people think that. It's really kind of weird. And I didn't think there were any cameras in that room. So I'd love to see that.
Maybe it is the Mandela effect.
Well,
now you got me questioning.
It sounds interesting,
sure
whatever it was.
All right. I will look for it for you.
Okay. Are we going to take this call? I should warn you, some of our callers have a tendency to wander off topic, and hopefully that's not the case here.
Yeah, some of them like to be first, too.
Okay. Good evening. You're on Off the Hook Overtime.
Yes, Emmanuel.
Let me just stop you right there. Hold on a second. And let me tell Space Rogue, this is Rebel, who is always the first caller, has been since the 1990s. So I guess it's appropriate that he's the first caller now. Rebel, if I might ask you to please try and keep things on topic,
Yeah,
even though
I remember hearing about the Lost. I remember, seeing. I mean, I never really went to their sites or anything, but I have heard of them. But anyway, being that you're talking to people from the 90s, remember computer, I'm going to ask this question to the Lost people. Remember computer terminals like, computer, like colleges had them and like their libraries and like different entities had, I remember in college they had Digital Equipment Corporation computer mainframes and they had VT, was it 230 or whatever
VT 220s is what I used.
220. I think we had the later version. But have you ever heard of a computer company called Informer? They're from like the 70s. I think they're from like 79 or 70.
I am not familiar with Informer. I used VT 110s, VT 220s from DEC, and Weiss terminals, and I don't remember the model numbers of the Weiss terminals.
I think the Informer was like the precursor to that. They were from California, but I think they went out of business in the 90s.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with them at all.
Well, all right. Now let me mention that. Remember in the 90s, we never heard commercials in supermarkets.
Yeah, we had Muzak in supermarkets.
Well,
I don't
Muzak,
remember.
Yeah,
I don't remember hearing commercials.
Really?
I don't think I have commercials in my supermarket today, but I'm sure some supermarkets do.
you have announcements.
We have announcements. Yeah.
Like, breakage in aisle 3. That's sort of like a commercial, I guess.
Well, yeah, but that's not a commercial. But where you hear the commercials on TV, you now hear them in the supermarket. Without the video, of course.
Well, there's commercials everywhere. They're in movie theaters now too. So yeah, that's.
I was in a restaurant and I heard commercials.
Really? Okay, that's kind of weird if you're actually at a table and you're hearing commercials. Are you sure somebody wasn't playing something?
You can always put in your headphones and listen to your iPhone and listen to Off the Hook on a podcast.
That's what he does. He does that.
Yeah. Well, let me demonstrate the 225. Let me remember when I told you I was going to demonstrate what 2259901 did.
Didn't we ask you not to? All right. You know what? Go ahead. Please do it quickly.
Moment, sir. Let me connect you. One moment, sir.
This is what happens. We have no control. And he puts us on hold. That's the thing he does.
I'm putting you on hold.
Although your call cannot be completed to the number you dialed, I can quickly help you find similar businesses in the area for no additional charge. I'm searching now.
That's what 2259901 does now.
But why did you call that number?
Because it's 2259901 used to tell you what central office it is.
Okay, now it tries to connect you with similar businesses, but what business were you looking for to start with?
I wasn't looking for a business.
So what does it connect you to then?
It didn't connect. Well, all right. Well, 225, the Bayside Queens Central Office has 225, 229, 428 and all. But if you call 2299901, it says, welcome to the Bayside Central Office.
Okay, like they used to say. All right, so my question to you then is, does it doesn't give you any information, just says that?
It says that, but it says it does connect you with it doesn't connect you with anything, but let's just hear it again and see.
Yeah, but Rebel, what I'm trying to tell you is I think what you're calling is just the recording. Like, there used to be all kinds of numbers you'd call, and one would say, please insert 25 cents. It didn't actually want you to insert 25 cents, but that's the number they kept that recording at for some reason. So I think that's what you're...
Yeah, but that's not a phone company recording. It doesn't sound like a phone company recording.
Well, I'm not saying it belongs to the phone company. It belongs to somebody, and they're just keeping that recording there. It doesn't actually do anything.
Why on 9901? Maybe because 9901, I don't know.
I've called Space Rogue, for in case you don't know, a 9901 suffix in New York oftentimes identifies the central office of the phone company and tells you what other exchanges are linked to that particular exchange. But lately, I've noticed that 9901 is used for almost anything. In fact, I've even called people at 9901. So it's not necessarily what it used to be.
Just like
I would assume it was historically for phone company workers to figure out what exchange went to one CO, but phone company workers don't need that number anymore because they can just look it up. so they don't need to call. So what else are you going to use the number for if the phone company doesn't need it?
Yeah, they're just going to give it out.
They
And
just
it's-
repurpose it to
Just like
something
the
else.
It's a good sounding number. 9970 used to
9970
be 9970 used to be all busy. 9971 used to be fast busy. 9979 was a sweep tone. There were all kinds of cool numbers.
And it's
then
all
99
digital now, so
99
the phone company workers don't need those numbers anymore.
That's true. That's true.
Down to like quality of service, unless like they could do it with instruments and so forth.
hmm
They're less reliant
Right.
on communicating.
Rebel, what else you got? And then we're going to move on.
The 917 exchange area code used to be just for like cellular phones and
Mhm.
and pagers. Now it's 718 could be a cell phone. 917 could be. I don't know,
I've
maybe
had 212 cell phone numbers. Yeah. Anything is possible. Area codes don't mean anything anymore. It's sad because I like being able to identify where things are coming from, but that's just a decision that was made.
Okay, hold on for long distance. Let me connect with
Hold
you.
on for long distance.
They don't even do that anymore.
There,
When you
because there
call
is
the
no long
operator and ask-
distance.
Everything's
No, there is,
local.
but-
Yeah.
But no, there is. But when you ask the 18, the 9, the what are they called now?
You don't even know the name of the phone company.
Verizon.
Can you ask the zero operator for long distance? She said, yeah, you'll have to call information to find out your long distance. They used to connect you with the long distance carrier, and they don't anymore.
You know,
And they
what's-
used to not connect you with the station.
What's crazy is that I still get Bell Atlantic recordings sometimes. Like if I get a busy signal and it wants me to use their service where it calls me back, it says Bell Atlantic will call you back, and
It still says that.
it still
today.
says that, and that's what 2 phone companies ago. They lost track of the recording, I guess. But you can find things
And
like
when
that
ask
if
for
you look.
information- Yeah, when you call information, may I have information? And she said, oh, you'll have to dial 411. They don't even connect you with things anymore, unless you ask to be connected with a phone number.
Sign of our times. We're just not connected anymore.
But lost people.
Yes.
Do you remember when zero operators used to do things like that? By the way, do you know anything about TOPS? How TOPS works? Like
Not modern ones, no.
No, not
mean,
modern
everything's
ones today,
digital
but
now.
I'm talking about the
Everything's
90s.
digital.
Yeah. Like remember TSPS, and then they had terminals and all this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
Ancient
Rebel,
history.
it was a pleasure as always. Please stay in touch. We're going to open up the phone lines for more people, and
Okay.
take care. See you next time.
Okay.
All right. 802-321-4225. That's 802-321-HACK. We have Space Rogue here from the Loft. It's still technically from the Loft, not formally of the Loft. because
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
the
either
Loft
way.
that isn't
The
technically
loft is former, not me.
Uh-huh.
I'm
But
still here.
you guys existed before Hackerspaces as a concept existed.
Pretty much. We were one of the very first, if not the first hackerspace. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I remember at the time, I think there was New Hack City in Boston.
There was New Hack City. There was Sin House. There was a lot of different houses where people kind of lived and were kind of hackerish.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't call them hacker spaces. I think there was a difference there between a shared living quarters and what a hacker space is.
Right,
But there was,
exactly.
a lot of crossover too.
Uh-huh. Well, it was an amazing environment. It was unique. Nobody else had that. I think it just inspired so many other people to try something similar. Are you aware of anything like this in Boston now, or?
There is a couple of hacker spaces in Boston now. I don't know if they really want their name mentioned in public, but they do exist. Some of the old folks are there, and some new folks in at least 2 different organizations I know of in Boston. I'm sure there are some. There's one here in Philadelphia called Hive 76, and there's one called the Hacktory, which are sort of hacker/maker spaces. And I'm sure there are ones in other cities as well.
Wow. And other countries all around the world.
Yes.
Have you guys had much contact with international hacker community?
We did, as Loft, there was Access for All out of the Netherlands and of course, Chaos in Europe. There was Garoa Hacker Club in Brazil, I think. I'm going to get these countries wrong. I'm sorry. And a couple other ones scattered around the world. But since then, not as much recently, mostly because I've been sort of out of touch as opposed to them not existing.
Uh-huh. All right. 802-321-4225. Any calls, Carl?
No, lines are open.
Lines are wide open. Okay.
Operators are standing by.
All right. Sometimes we have to beg for calls just for people to call in and ask questions.
Well, there's a little delay after you give the phone.
And there's also a delay. But now, to get back to the reunion meeting in the congressional bill, it wasn't a Congress thing. It was something that happened in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I forget the name of the group that sponsored it, like the Cyber Caucus or something.
Congressional Internet Caucus Academy.
There you go.
And the Senate Cybersecurity Caucus.
It's great to have notes in front of you, huh?
Yeah. I'd never heard of those groups before. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so they sponsored it. They got a room in one of the office buildings, and Mudge and I and Weld and Kingpin were there. We had the lovely Katie Masuris who moderated for us, and we had a room of maybe 50, 75 people. It was also filmed. It's up on YouTube. I don't think it's as interesting as the original testimony, personally, but we all had a few things to say about then and how things had progressed into now, or now 5 years ago, and that's what we did for the 20th anniversary.
Well, one thing that Mudge said that really struck me was he was talking about the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, saying how it was used selectively, it's used unevenly, saying that the anti-circumvention provisions of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, which is intended to stop digital intellectual property infringement, also suppresses security research. And Kingpin chimed in, we live in a very litigious society. The risk of lawsuits has made security research in some ways riskier than it was in 1998, when every member of Loft felt compelled to testify under their hacker handles instead of their real names. He said, now that I have kids and I don't want to go to jail, I'm very nervous. And I think that kind of is a feeling many people have because of all these laws and rules that are in effect now, made by people who don't necessarily understand the technology they're regulating. A lot of good things are quelled.
Absolutely. I mean, you can look at numerous cases under the CFAA where people were threatened with large sentences for ostensibly very minor crimes. DMCA is another sledgehammer that's used to great effect by those that hold the copyright and against those who don't. And so, and a lot of these cases, sometimes these laws are tweaked over time. CFAA is one of those that's had a lot of minor changes to it over the years. And so it's not as bad as it was. But the CFAA specifically is because of the guidance out of the DOJ that says, we can selectively prosecute this or that, or we should not look at this so strongly, or we look at this stronger. But that changes with every administration, or even less. So those guidances can be come down again as different guidance, and the CFAA becomes a much bigger threat than it is right now today. And so there's still a lot of effort underway to actually change the wording of the laws so that they become a little bit more clear and not as ambiguous as they currently are.
Because would you be able to say like the follow-on is that there are gaps then for periods when different types of activities for security and people looking into this stuff, they periods where people were more reluctant and it sort of ebbs and flows, and then wouldn't it have that kind of impact in a commercial scenario?
Yeah, there is an ebb and flow to the laws, absolutely, because of the ambiguity in the wording and the selectiveness in the prosecutions, and who can and cannot take advantage of some of those laws. And so because we have the Department of Justice coming down and saying, okay, we're not going to look at CFAA violations this strongly this year, next year they may come down and say, okay, we're really going to step on this aspect of the law and really prosecute this section. Unfortunately, the laws are written, these particular laws especially, the CFAA was originally written in 1986. It's been, I think, it actually may be even older than that. And it has been modified since then. There has been tweaks to it, but it's still, a lot of terms are not defined very well. Unauthorized access. What actually is authorized? Mm-hmm. If I visit a web page, have I been authorized? Or do I need specific permission from the company to visit their web page? That isn't really defined in the law, and it isn't defined anywhere else. What is an access control device? I'm sure, well, I won't go there. So those are, you know where I was going to go.
Yes.
Being in Philly and all that. But anyway, so those are parts of the law that are not adequately defined. And so those definitions can be at the whim of the prosecutor to figure out what's going to happen there. So, this is one of the reasons why I'm sort of involved in policy and try to meet with lawmakers and educate them and talk to them and sort of say, this is what's happening out here on my side of the world with these laws and why we need to make some changes or modify the wording in them.
We have a phone call.
Yeah, we do.
And good evening. You're on Off the Hook Overtime.
Hi there, guys.
Hey, how's it going?
And the one lady. It's good to talk to you. This is Johnny Fusion again.
Oh,
Well-
hey, how you doing?
Welcome.
Well, I've been better. I'm in the hospital, but and tuning in.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it's been a rough month. I caught COVID at the beginning of the month, recovered from that. Now I got the norovirus.
Oh boy. Well,
Yeah, well, because I am on those transplant meds, I'm immunocompromised, so it's really easy for me to catch stuff.
uh-huh.
And yeah.
And sometimes hospitals are bad places for that too. Hopefully you're
Well,
in a good one.
I'm still staying in a nursing facility, and that's probably where I pick these things up.
Uh-huh. I see. Well, you sound good if that's any consolation.
Well, I'm a bit better today, but
Mhm.
I'm here to talk about The Loft and Space Rogue. I did buy the book during the break.
Excellent.
Between the radio show
Thank
and
you.
Off the Hook.
Thank you.
I have my Kindle with me here in the hospital, and so I just went on Amazon and bought the ebook, and I'm looking forward to reading that as I have a lot of time on my hands, as you can imagine. I've been following The Loft for a long time. When they testified before Congress, I thought that was amazing. I actually rewatched the whole testimony just a few months ago, and it was really, it was a watershed moment for hackerdom and just basically how clueless government is with tech. Kind of like what I said in my last call when I was talking with the guy from the EFF about just how behind people in government, in the legislature and in the judiciary especially, are behind on just the tech scene and the realities of what tech is.
Well, I like to think that they're catching up sometimes. And then, of course, technology takes another giant leap forward. So it's going to take a while, I think, for example, as you mentioned at the beginning of the show, ChatGPT, how are we going to handle these chatbots, right? What's the legal ramifications of these chatbots and what's ethical and what's not, right? And so those are the things that we need to look at and try to decide on and educate lawmakers on now so that when they go to write the laws, and they will, because that's what they do, that they write them correctly and appropriately so that they actually are effective laws that go into the future and not have issues that we have with some of the older laws.
Yeah, actually, I addressed this in an upcoming article that's going to be published in the magazine. I actually got
great.
an acceptance email in the emergency department.
Well, they gave it to you? I didn't know.
Well, no, I was checking my email on my phone, and I got the email.
Oh, I thought it was like a telegram. They ran it through and said, "Sir, you must see this," because we do that sometimes.
No, but yeah, and I'm very grateful for you publishing me again. This will be my 5th article for the magazine.
Well, we're the ones who are grateful for people who write, because believe it or not, it's a rarity these days. And I'm afraid that people are going to use these artificial intelligence applications as crutches and never learn how to write. So it's always good when people actually take the time.
Well, I've been writing a long time, and I take pride in my craft, and that's what the article is about not being replaced by AI, because every human being is unique and has a unique voice and can't really be replaced, because human beings aren't really replaceable or interchangeable.
Yes, well said. Well said. Any other questions for Space Rogue?
Yeah, I remember, I think it was, time is wonky during the pandemic, but sometime during the pandemic, didn't Lost Crack go open source?
Yeah, Loft Crack has had a long and storied history. I'm not sure I'm the best person to tell the Loft Crack story, but I'll try to give you a brief synopsis. The current status, I believe it is open source. So Loft Crack was a product that Loft had, which audited Windows NT passwords, for those that aren't familiar with it, back in 1997 when it first came out. And it's gone through several iterations and versions over the years. At Stake, when At Stake bought Loft, they didn't really know what to do with Loft Crack. Again, that didn't fit in their business model either. So they kind of they had to rechange the name from Loft Crack to LC, LC5. I think was the release version. And then when Symantec bought At Stake, they didn't know what to do with it all, and they shelved it. Somehow Mudge and Weld and Dildog got Loft Crack back from Symantec and re-released the product. And then they realized it's too much work for us to do. We got day jobs. We can't really keep up with this anymore. And so they gave or sold or licensed the product to another company, and they kind of just let it flounder for a couple of years. And so Weld and Mudge and Dildog were like, I don't know what you're doing over there with this thing, but we're taking it back. And so they somehow got it back from this other company and then released it as open source. And so now Loft Crack is open source, and anybody can use it for free. And I'm not sure the website to point you to, maybe loftcrack.com. You can Google it, I'm sure. And it's L0PHT. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I would just say, being open source, wouldn't that also mean that anyone can develop it themselves?
Yes.
In addition to...
I'm not sure what the license it was released under. It's not my project, but
sure.
It still exists. It's still out there, and you can go find it and do what you will with it.
It's awesome.
It's under a combination. I'm sorry to jump in, but it's under a combination of licenses, all open source.
Okay,
great.
Good. It's just awesome that they care enough about it to keep looking after it, making sure it's being treated with the respect it deserves.
Yeah, I mean, they could have sold it off or whatever the deal was they made with this other company and then just totally forgot about it. But it was important to make sure that it stayed alive and was useful. And it's really, I think Loft Crack is another influential part of the Loft story in the fact that it was really one of the very first widely available Windows NT password auditors and influenced a large number of other programs that came after it. Jack the Ripper might have been first as a Unix program, but the NT part was influenced by Loft Crack. So, and then there's Off Crack without the L.
Didn't know about that one.
Yeah, there's Off Crack. There's a couple other ones too that were similarly named that are out there. And when Loft Crack kind of went on hiatus, they kind of took over, and now Loft Crack. I haven't really been keeping up. I don't really know, but it's out there if you want it.
Wow.
Yeah, and I just want to thank the Loft and for being pioneers. You talked about it a little bit earlier before I called about being pioneers in the hacker space. A few years ago I moved to a new community, and that was one of the first things that I was able to get plugged into and build, my social wellness in a new community was going to the local hacker space. This was Sonora, California, very small rural town in the foothills in the Sierra Nevadas, and they had the Motherlode Maker Lab. And, I met a group of friends, and I just was able to go there and hack, learn to 3D print, and I started working with microcontrollers and got better at my Linux skills, and I think the genesis of all hacker spaces really began with the Loft, and because of the impact it had on my life, I'm just really grateful for the genesis of I'm sure it happened just organically, but it was repeated, and that model has repeated, just kind of like as hackers do, we take what works and we repeat it and we share it and we grow it.
Well, thank you very much for the kind words, and I'm glad that Loft was there and was able to assist you in your journey and further of your education and well-being and social makeup. Those are really impactful things to hear that we sort of played a part in. I don't know how to handle that. People tell me that sometimes, and I'm like, we were just a bunch of guys in a warehouse, really. and people tell me that the Loft had a major impact on their life. So thank you for that. I appreciate those words.
Yes, thank you so much for all the words that you share with us, both on the radio, in the magazine, and just in appreciation of what we have in the hacker community, because it's unique, it's precious, it's something that's so worth preserving.
Yeah, definitely. And when I'm medically cleared to live independently again after this transplant journey, I plan to be going to the San Francisco 2600 meetings and finding another local hacker or maker space.
Awesome.
And putting down roots close to my transplant center. Because when I get sick, I don't want to go to any other hospital.
No, that's you got to take care of yourself. That's the important thing. It was great hearing from you, and I really hope next time we hear from you, you'll be in a much better place and thriving.
Thank you, Emmanuel. It was good to talk to you and talk to everyone.
And please
I
keep
hope
writing.
You're all doing well.
Please keep writing.
What's that?
Keep writing. We need more writers.
Okay, I'll get to work on my next article.
Okay. Be well. Thanks for calling.
Bye.
Pretty awesome there. While we were speaking with him, I was just looking over something on your Wikipedia page. It's really jumped out at me concerning a 2016 U.S. Government Accountability Office report. This is about the nation's nuclear weapons and how they're under the control of computers that rely on outdated 8-inch floppy disks. I remember seeing this on 60 Minutes. And I believe you argued that the older computers, data storage systems, programming languages, and lack of internet connectivity actually makes it more difficult for them to be broken into, effectively reducing the vulnerability of the weapons control systems to hacking. Whereas most people would say, oh my God, this is so outdated. We have to replace this with the most modern thing right now. And I think you saw it for what it was, as actually through its antiquity, actually being a level of security that many systems today can't achieve.
Security through obscurity, sometimes it's referred to. I think in that particular case, the argument was that, oh my God, it's old, we have to make it new. And that was it. That was the argument. And we're talking about systems that were controlling nuclear weapons. We're talking about 8-inch floppy drives, like really old, ancient stuff. And my argument is this stuff isn't connected to the internet. You would need physical access to it anyway. So as long as you have spare parts and a source of 8-inch floppy disks and backups, who cares how old it is? It works. Don't fix it, right? And so, if this was an internet connected system, if there was other, variables that we needed to take into account, then maybe upgrading it would be wise. But in this particular case, none of that really applied. The fact that it was old didn't really matter. It worked. So let it continue to work.
Isn't that the answer to so many of our problems, though? Does everything have to be connected to the internet?
I actually got a gift of a connected Rubik's Cube today.
Really?
It's actually kind of neat, and I am enjoying it immensely. But it's just the fact that I have a Rubik's Cube, like the actual toy, the Rubik's Cube has Bluetooth in it, is kind of amazing.
I mean, as a gimmick, yeah, it's great, but you don't need your refrigerator to be on the internet, do you? I mean,
no, I don't need my refrigerator to be on the internet. In fact, I do actually have a Wi-Fi enabled washing machine, dryer, and oven in my house, but none of them I have connected. Even though I have an IoT network on my home network, I have not connected them to it because I don't need to. But what they're starting to do, and I've noticed this the hard way, is there are certain features that you cannot access unless it's through the app. So I cannot, for example, there is a certain dryer setting on my dryer, and I forget what the setting is, but every now and then I want to use it. I can't access it because it's only via the app. And I just so I have to use some other setting on the dryer. It's kind of frustrating.
Does the app have to go through the internet, or can the app connect directly?
I'm assuming it has to go onto it's not a local ad hoc network, so it has to go onto my network somehow. I don't know if it needs to phone home to the home servers. I hope not, because I'm sure that company's not going to be here 30 years from now. They're not going to keep those servers around.
Exactly.
I hope, luckily my dryer will still be here. I don't know.
But that's how they force you to upgrade and get new equipment when your old equipment is, at 2600, we drive machines into the ground. We use things for 10, 20 years. And if they're not being used for the most urgent stuff, they're being used for something.
Yeah,
Sorry.
just to add a fine detail, like we have machines that we've replaced capacitors on the motherboards themselves, and then put the machine back in with new power supplies or new drives and the same old OS if we want it offline or whatever.
Yep, go right back out there to the front line. That's
My toothbrush is 15 years old, and I've replaced the battery 4 times.
Awesome. Wow.
wow. Okay.
Yeah. That's
Because the new
spirit.
toothbrush, the new ones have like some pressure sensitive thing in it to protect your gums or something, and it's like, I don't want that, but you can't turn it off, and it's there, and I'm like, so I bought the new one, I hated it, so I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to take my old one apart and put a new battery in it, and so I've done that 4 times now. The toothbrush is from like, it's 15 years old at least, if not older. I had to actually buy older toothbrushes off eBay to get spare parts to fix this one toothbrush.
I'm running a machine on XP.
Oh,
That
geez.
is only reason for existence is to run an old version of iTunes for Windows. And the reason I want that is because it's not filled with bloatware and ads and all kinds of connect to the iTunes store. And I want that. I want to keep it that way. And anytime something happens where I might have to change some bit of hardware in that machine, I'm always being lectured, you have to upgrade. No, I don't have to upgrade. I like it the way it is. It's not connected to the internet. It plays music for me. It's perfect. I don't want the newest thing, because as soon as I get that, it's going to do something I don't want it to do. It's going to rename something to something I don't want. A lot of people don't seem to understand that. They feel they have to immediately change things when they're told to change things by the company, by the software manufacturer. I mean, sometimes it's a good idea when it's a security issue. Many times, though, if you have something that you like and it's you understand the security concerns, there's nothing wrong with you running it the way you want to run it without somebody telling you what to do.
Exactly.
I'm glad somebody agrees. It took long enough to find somebody. Well, Space Rogue, it's been a delight. It really has. Please tell us more about how people can get your book, and what your next book is going to be about.
So the current book is Space Rogue: How the Hackers Known as Loft Changed the World. It is available at better bookstores everywhere, including Amazon, both in hardcover, paperback, and ebook. So feel free to check out. Go to your local bookstore. Bookshop.org, if you're not familiar with it, will donate part of your purchase price to your local bookshop, so that we can have the local stores stay open and not get run out of business by Amazon. But if Amazon's your only choice, it's available there too.
Yeah.
As for the next book, I don't know yet.
Yeah. Well, I think that'll depend on the feedback to this book, which it just came out, about a month ago, 2 months ago?
It's been 6 weeks. I think it's been available.
6 weeks. Okay. So
Great looking cover. It ended up really, really, really nice.
yeah,
I like it.
absolutely. And how do the rest of the people in the loft feel about it?
That's an interesting question. So I didn't tell anybody I was writing the book until it basically came out.
Uh-huh. Did they appreciate the surprise?
I haven't had any negative feedback from them. There's one person in the community who I won't name, who is mentioned in the book, and I sent them a advanced copy and said, "Hey, I'm publishing this book. You're in it," and they were not very happy. They didn't want to be in the book at all. But other than that, the feedback has been very positive.
Wow. So, some words towards the end of the book that one of the reviews mentions. You say hackers are not the bad guys. Most of the great inventors of our time, such as Alexander Graham Bell, Mildred Kenner, and Nikola Tesla, could easily be considered hackers. Criminal gangs who are running ransomware campaigns or are stealing credit cards are just that, criminals. They just happen to use a computer instead of a crowbar. They are not hackers, not to me anyway. Loft's message of bringing security issues to light and getting them fixed still echoes throughout the industry and is more important today than ever. I can't think of a better way to sum it all up.
Thank you.
All right, we've been speaking with Space Rogue, who has written a terrific book. Please get a copy, gift it to people, and write to us with your feedback. If you have anything you want to say about this show, or the one previous, oth@2600.com. Space Rogue, any contact points you'd like to give out?
I'm on Twitter. I'm on Mastodon. Prefer Mastodon. There's a website, spacerogue.net. Have email. There's a web form on the website. I'm pretty much available everywhere. On LinkedIn as Space Rogue, which is kind of interesting. I don't know how long that'll last, but it's been there for 20 years. So,
wow. Are you surprised some things have lasted for a long, long time and other things just?
Yeah, my LinkedIn profile is Space Rogue is one of them because they keep saying they're going to crack down on not real names, but it's been up there as Space Rogue for 20 years, and hopefully it'll stay there.
Awesome. Well, again, it's been so much fun talking. We could talk for hours and hours, and hopefully we will again soon. And we look forward to seeing you at Hope, and maybe we'll make it down to where you are at some point.
All right, great. Looking forward to seeing you.
All right. Take care. Good night, everybody. We'll see you in 2 weeks.